got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're talking about this week's episode of Andor. This one is called Nobody's Listening, and it is episode 9 of the show so far. It was pretty interesting, so we're going to do a fairly deep dive of the episode, and then we'll talk about our thoughts on it, and then it'll be up to you whether you want to go out and watch it. So, Sarah, what happened this week?
All right, so I'm going to segment it kind of in our own little character groups. The first is a continuation of last week's episode of Bix being interrogated by Dedra. We saw her previously get taken into the room, and then it kind of cut the scene there last time. So this time we get to figure out what are their scare tactics? What is it that she wants to know? What are they going to try to figure out? We learn that there is no interrogation droid, like what Jeremy had possibly thought he heard. Maybe it's something else in the room that made that noise last week. I'm not sure. But what we do learn that they use as a scare tactic is this helmet. And at first I thought it was like a VR system, but it's actually just sound. There's no visual, there's no visor. But they kind of described it as something haunting or children screaming or something along those lines. I didn't quite pick up exactly what the sounds were that she was hearing, other than it was very disturbing. She looked mentally exhausted and wiped out after that interrogation had happened. So Daedra, we find out later, gets actually a fair amount of information from her, such as like when Cassian was last there, how many days ago he was there, the fact that he was there with a lot of money to be able to pay off some of his debts and whatnot, which seems pretty suspicious since there was just that robbery not that long ago. So following Daedra's story, we see her and Cyril bump into each other in kind of like an imperial outdoor hallway, if you will, or courtyard area. And she's very surprised to see him. She had already told him before, basically, like, all right, I got what I needed from you. Now leave me alone. Stay out of it. Just, go do your thing and be a normal person. So she's pretty irritated that he's there, but he's trying to give thanks and tell her that basically because of her, his life has purpose now because there's order and justice to be had, which she still just gets super annoyed with, like, leave me alone, dude, move on with your life kind of a thing.
She's playing hard to get.
Well, one could see it that way, but she does threaten to have him imprisoned if he keeps talking to her. So we'll see if he makes another effort, if she follows through with her word this time. And then one more thing following Daedra's story. This is towards the end of the episode, actually, but we have one of those council meetings, or round table talks, as Jeremy sometimes calls them. But it's very limited capacity. There's not the full-fledged meeting or council there. It's maybe 5 or 6 people instead of, say, 15. There was a routine customs check where a pilot, I think, accidentally flashed some sort of imperial symbol or something along those lines, and it seemed kind of odd. So customs followed him and searched that it was just the pilot by himself. There wasn't anything suspicious on board, really, except that he had a stolen imperial masking device. So as the Imperials, they're trying to figure out, what do we do with this guy that clearly has something that he stole from other people? And Daedra comes up with a plan of why don't we follow him and basically stage some sort of mechanical failure that kills the pilot and then just let the ship crash into traffic. And the guy who's in charge of the council, he seems very pleased with her idea, and he's really kind of taken a liking to her lately and has applauded many of her ideas. So I could very easily see her becoming promoted sometime um, soon. Which reminds me, I forgot to say the whole reason why Cyril was talking to Daedra, aside from being happy that his life has purpose now, is that I guess he was promoted. And he thought that she might have had something to do with it. But she claims that she is unrelated to his promotion. Um, so now we're going to go to Mon Mothma and kind of what's going on with her. So we see a scene of her at one of those council meetings, where they're all in their little pods in the giant open tunnel room, if you will. Um,
The Senate.
yes, thank you. Uh, Nobody is listening to her. She's trying to say whatever her plan is, and they even make a point of kind of drowning out what she's saying with just background noise, like if you're at a cafe or something. Like they're really trying to drive home that point that nobody's paying attention. You can almost hear the background noise of people chit-chatting louder than you can hear her. Um, so not a whole lot comes of that other than just showing that, really doesn't matter what she's saying anymore because people aren't listening anyway. We find out that her driver tells her, "Hey, your cousin came into town," and she's very confused as to why this happened this day. Either she came really early or she just didn't know she was coming at all. But we find out who this cousin is, and it's actually Vel, who was the head of the heist, right? She's the
Mhm.
blonde-haired lady. Um, who was in charge of the heist in the previous episodes. So we learned that they're cousins, and then that's kind of how they know each other, which ties, Mon Mothma to Luthen to Vel, and now it's, everybody kind of knows each other now. That we have that connection piece. Um, we learn that Tay is having a hard time getting Mon Mothma's money for her, which is kind of why she's formed an alliance with him and kind of let him in on the secret, is that he's supposed to be helping her gain access to her funds. And she's trying to, they're having an issue where I believe she withdrew $400,000 and it seems really fishy, and that's why they're having a hard time getting more money taken out. So to be able to get more money out, she almost kind of has to put more money in to make that 400,000 not seem like a fishy withdrawal anymore. But where are you going to get $400,000? If she had that laying around, then she wouldn't need to withdraw any money, right? So Tay is trying to get her to basically take out a loan with this really well known thug or criminal, if you will. I didn't quite catch his name, but she is really not having it. She doesn't want to do something so um, uh, not regulation, if you will, I guess, or by the books. She doesn't really want to work with somebody of that caliber if she doesn't have to. So she doesn't agree to it, but I don't think she says no exactly either. I think it might be kind of one of those things of like, I really don't want to, but I have to. Um, so that's kind of where we leave off with Mon Mothma. So now we switch over to Cassian and what's been going on with him, right? So he's been trying to conspire with some of his jailmates about how to escape, how many guards are there. Um, you know, as Jeremy said for the name of the episode, nobody's listening. And they even make a point of him basically yelling that because nobody is listening. They don't care. As long as you don't step on the floor and try to leave, they're not going to listen to your plans because they got better things to do. Why waste my time listening to you when you're in your bunk and stuff? Um, so there's that going on. Uh, his team is trying to be at the top of the charts for production level. We learned in a previous episode that whoever's at the top of the charts for production for their shift gets taste or flavor in their food versus it just being tasteless. Um, So they're trying to be the best they can be, but one of the guys is really having a hard time. He's struggling. And for a while, we can't really tell exactly why, other than we know he's older. He's been there for quite a while. He's probably very tired he's been in jail for a long time, and it's a very laborious jail position to be in because they make you work 12-hour shifts every day. Um, but eventually he uh he faints in the hallway, right? And when the med tech comes and does his little diagnosis on him, we find out that he's actually had a massive stroke. Like, there's no going back from this. There's no med pack that can fix this. He's just done for. And since he's no longer of use to the Empire, the med tech just puts him out of his misery. Like, there's I guess in their eyes, even though he only had 40 shifts left, so basically 40 days left of his sentence, there's nothing left for you here. You're too far gone, so let me just say goodbye right now. Um, the guy couldn't talk or anything. He was still knocked out. But, just a very disheartening situation to be in, of being so close to being free and then having it all ripped from you. But at the same time, they the med tech almost kind of says, you should be uh like jealous or envious of him because at least he's getting away from all of this. And the reason why I say that is because throughout the episode there's been a lot of hype and scaredness of trying to figure out what the heck is going on with one of the other levels. So, they're doing their sign language and trying to figure out what's going on. And so MedTech actually reveals to them when the guard walks away, somebody who was on level 4 was released, right? So he's supposed to go home. Well, then they found him on level 2. And what is he doing on level 2 if he was supposed to go home? And so I think the way we kind of interpreted what was happening, um, because after this was found out, everybody on level 2 got fried. And by fried, I mean dead, like gone. So we're thinking that they figured out that the guy who was supposed to go home, instead of going home, they just shifted him over to some other level and didn't let him leave, and may have kind of panicked or revolted or something, um, like anybody would if they realized if he didn't get out, then I'm not getting out either. So they all got killed. So that's why I think the med tech was kind of saying, at least this guy got out because we're never getting out. Um, and Cassian had been kind of poking and prodding at his floor lead to give him information to try to help form an escape plan. The main thing he kept asking was how many guards were on each floor. And throughout the episode, I'm not telling you, don't talk about that stuff, just shut up and do your job. And after figuring out this final piece of information, his floor lead finally tells him there's never more than 12 guards on a floor. So he's starting to be a little bit more willing to cooperate and maybe realize I'm not getting out if I just shut up and do what I'm told. I'm gonna have to find a way to get myself out, or I'm not getting out. Um, and that was kind of the very end of the episode, was that scene between him and the floor lead. Um, so that's kind of where we leave things off for this week. So what do you think, Jeremy? Is there anything major that I missed, or favorite parts of the episode, or least favorite?
I wouldn't say there was anything major missed. I would just say one thing that kind of adds a little bit to the guy in charge of his level. He mentioned that he had 217 days left, so he was kind of getting close to being done. So that might add a little bit more to why he wants to try to help Cassian. Um, I did have a small question just because I can't remember if I forgot it or not. You were talking about Mon Mothma and you were referring to somebody named Tay. Did you mean
Mm-hmm.
Vel? Who was
No,
Tay?
Tay is the old childhood friend.
Oh, oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about him. I forgot
He's
he
the
was in
guy
this
with
episode.
I think he's got kind of grayish hair, and for a while he didn't really want to talk to Mon Mothma about politics because he was on the rebel side and didn't know she was, and she was on the rebel side, didn't know he was, and so now they're kind of on the same page working together a little bit.
Yeah, I just kept referring to him as the school friend. I didn't really, I never knew his name, so that's why I was confused. But for this episode, I thought it was pretty good. It once again left me wanting more. I want to see more of what's happening, especially with the cliffhanger of, the revealing what's happening on the other level and ultimately telling these people that they're not going to get out. Uh, it's interesting because, we don't have Tony with us, so he can't make the history connection, but it reminds me of Germany when Hitler was in power. Like he would uh, give very, very stupid uh, sentencings to Jewish people and then put them in these camps, and then they knew they weren't going to get out. This kind of reminds me of this situation, as basically all these people are going to stay there until they die. How Tony kept mentioning that there's a lot of historical stuff that can connect. It kind of reminded me of that, which also goes along with the idea that the Empire originally was based a lot off of Nazi Germany. You can see it in the helmets. Vader's helmet is modeled after a German Nazi helmet, and also Nazis were known as stormtroopers. So it's kind of interesting how they make those connections, like the way that the movies started with. They're still making those connections. It was cool to see more about behind the scenes Empire stuff. It's although we're Team Empire for Vader and whatnot, so to speak. It's starting to make me question my ideals a little bit because it's like, ooh, and now that we're starting to see this stuff, I don't know. It's really starting to give, I think, more and more um, reasons to really wonder about supporting the Empire. I don't know how to word that. It's making you more uncomfortable to say that you're a Empire fan, but uh, it's good because it's starting to flesh out a little bit more. Why were people afraid of the Empire? Because I remember back in, before Disney bought Star Wars, people would say, "Why do you like the Empire? They're awful people." And it's like, well, if you really think about it, in the films, there really wasn't a whole lot that they were awful about in the original trilogy. It was the rebellion, just literally attacking them for no reason, except for Alderaan, of course, because they were trying to, squash another rebellious group. Um, it's painting a darker picture for the Empire, and I think that's cool because we're getting more and more of them being built in this show, as opposed to everything else being about flushing out the rebellion. I'd probably say it's like 80-20 in favor of the Empire of who's actually getting more true colors painted in this show. So I've really enjoyed that. I definitely would say that Dedra is my favorite character in this show. The actress is doing a phenomenal job, especially with a female Imperial lead. We're not used to seeing that, and I think she's doing a very, very good job with it. What do you think?
Well, I just want to touch on what you were saying earlier about, the Team Empire stuff and whatnot. I think to some point it's fun to be a villain. That's why, sometimes it can be a lot of people can gravitate towards villains and such, like Disney movies and stuff like that. But um usually you're right, there's not a whole lot of depth to them. It's really just more or less usually revenge or just a need for power. But with this show, we're diving a lot more into their actual moral ideology. And I think that's why the show's making it a bit more uncomfortable to continue to have that viewpoint because it's not just, oh, it's fun to be a villain. It's, oh, you're actually like torturing people and stuff and being really bad. And you're not just standing for justice like you say you are. You're just doing whatever the heck you want at whatever cost. And I think by adding that extra depth that we don't normally get with movies and whatnot, because there's only so much you can cover, I think that's why painting a different picture of them than what you typically saw, like with the original trilogy and whatnot. Which is interesting, when a show can make you feel uncomfortable, I feel like that's them doing their job. That's them. They made you feel something. They made you, it's not just happy go lucky, nothing go wrong. It's making you feel an emotion. Um, which, I'm saying something nice about the show. I guess that's what I'm getting at is it's doing something. And it's not what I thought it was going to do necessarily, I guess. I thought it was going to be a little bit more focused on Cassian doing things like the heist, and I guess I kind of thought that's what the show was just going to be, was a continuation of stuff like that. And there's a lot of other different background stories we're diving into that are finally being fleshed out. Um, so I'm thankful to have some sort of purpose with the show, I guess, and learning some new things. Um, I'm not necessarily dreading next week like I was earlier in the season. So, if that tells you anything, the show might be kind of turning to be a little bit more interesting and a little more thought-provoking.
Yeah, it's getting there, and we're almost to the end of the first season. And, if it's anything like Rogue One, where when we went and saw that movie, I thought, the first half was kind of boring, but then it really took off. Maybe that potential is here too with the show. It's starting to really heat up here towards the end. What are they going to leave this show after the last episode? Where's it going to end up? So, yeah, I'm very much just like you, more intrigued to see what happens next as opposed to when the show started. Uh, let's see, anything else? I also really like the floor leader's character a lot. Uh, trying to remember his name. I know I said it in the last episode that we covered. Um, I don't know, it's escaping me, but he does a really, really good job. Andy Serkis, that's his name. I think he does a really good job with his character. He really makes you feel for him as well because, he's trying to look good in the eyes of the Empire because, his time is coming up and he wants his floor to be the best amongst all the different levels. But it's cool to see how much he can also, flip the script as well. Because we were talking about how Luthen's character does so well with, playing the two different personalities. In this episode, we start to see the shift between I need to be a good boy and look good in the eyes of the Empire, and now he's starting to shift towards Andor's point of view of I need to get out. And so I think it's really cool to see his dynamics, which if you know who he is, he played Smeagol, so he's had experience in doing two different personalities. So um, yeah, I think that's about it for the episode. It was a good episode. I'd recommend, watching this arc, watching this episode, and definitely stay tuned for what happens next week. I am very excited to see where this arc ends because I believe next week is the end of this story arc, and then we have two episodes left that are kind of like their own arc, probably the send off of the show into season 2. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop us a like if you liked it. Also, drop us some comments letting us know your thoughts on this week's episode. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.